Welcome to the Human AI Alliance podcast. I'm your host, Lee Bristow. We invite guests onto the podcast who can give detailed, high resolution answers to questions we have about the Human AI Alliance. Today, we are joined by Shrey, who has 12 years of experience in business technology and data analytics at top consulting firms, including PwC, KPMG, Boston Consulting Group, and ZS Associates. This episode will focus on the commercial value of data and how it can be used as a force multiplier for commercial success. So, thank you for joining the Human AI Alliance podcast. Welcome, Shrey.
Thank you so much, Lee. Thanks for having me on this podcast. I'm pretty sure we're going to learn some new things on this one. So looking forward to it.
Indeed. So, just in terms of your journey into AI,
Mhm.
can you give me a little bit of a backstory in terms of how you got there?
Of course. So my journey started with the firm that you named, the last ZS Associates. It's a boutique consulting firm based in Princeton, and I started my journey with them as a technology analyst, more mainly focused on building data warehousing and building business intelligence solutions for Fortune 500 companies based in the US. My industry was focused on pharmaceutical and life sciences, and that's how we transitioned from back in the day from data warehousing to cloud, which is big data. And sooner rather than later, we were becoming an expert in cloud and then stepping it up a bit to blockchain. Did a little bit of blockchain for them as well. And then now we are talking AI. So I've seen like it's the interesting part about my journey, or something that I'm really proud of, is starting from the scratch, from ground bottom, which is on-prem, to cloud, to talking about blockchain, to talking about AI and Gen AI now. That's kind of has definitely grounded me, and also has given me a good foundation and built my core in terms of what these technologies have to offer. So that's how I've entered into the space per se, Lee.
Thank you. Thank you for that
Mhm.
introduction. And I mean, you're going back 12 years in terms of your knowledge and kind of bringing all that to the fore today. So yeah, let's try and unpack that a little bit further. So um, reflecting on your experience, I mean, one of the things that I loved about our initial conversation was the story around data and how you kind of change the narrative from cybersecurity protection, intellectual property, to actually being a story around it. And one of the stories that you chatted about was how your family actually started using data, and over the last 12 years, how they were trying and figure out what you were doing, to actually having conversations with you around how they could leverage data inside their business. And I really love that, and yeah, I'd love for you to share that those insights.
Absolutely. So just a little bit about my background and my family's. So I belong to a family of entrepreneurs, majority of them within manufacturing. So me joining a professional services was bizarre to them. It took me quite a bit of time, and probably I still am trying to tell them what professional services is. But coming from a very manufacturing mindset, it was very hard, even initially, to explain to them why data-driven decisions are important, and how data can help them. Because for them, it's building something. This is my product, I sell it. There is no sort of mindset of going into the data to view patterns, to have a story, and then action on that story. And that was, I'm talking 10, 12 years ago, that was sort of the mindset. But come to know, what has happened is because AI has surfaced so much, now the mindset shift is, oh, how can I use this data more? Now that I can converse with it, now that I can talk to my data, what can I do which can help me execute my next action in more efficiently and more productively. That's become the mindset. And that shift has now that has brought them to peace with that. Okay, I have data, I have all of my invoices, I have all of my sales, I have all my production data, all of my machines running. How can I make them more efficient? How can I use data to see what are my slowing down points when if we talk manufacturing? It's an assembly line, you know where you have inefficiencies in an assembly line. Same way, if I'm talking about, say, a new commercial product launch, it's launching it to the right market. It's targeting the right customer segment. It's launching it at the right time. All of these are data points that are available in the market right now, and some of which are possessed by these manufacturing or commercial setups. But now it's actually collating all of this and making a data-driven approach towards doing the action that you plan to do. And that is sort of the example that I quoted to you the other day, Lee, was I was talking to my one of my cousin brothers, and I said, "Okay, how are you tracking your sales? Like you're selling globally, you're trying to become a global brand. How are you tracking what is going on and what to do next?" And they said, "Oh, we are using dashboards, and I know what's happening. I just text my analyst, and he sends me a response." And I was like, to this day, like you're dependent on a person. First of all, integrating all of your data, calculating all the metrics every day, each hour, putting it on a dashboard which is refreshed on an hourly, daily, weekly basis. And then you're sending a text message to them asking for what's going on. And that for me was like, guys, there is a better way to do this. And that's where now when we talk about AI and Gen AI, these are the things that we can target just from operational efficiency point of view. Because you're in a business to create things, to manufacture things. You don't need to be a data analyst, but you do need to know your data. And that's kind of the shift in mindset that I'm seeing. And today they are using Power BI with Einstein and all of that to just like, step up their game. But that's kind of where the shift is going, even in manufacturing, which has been pretty much brick and mortar from the very early on.
So I think the line that I really loved in there is how can I talk to my data?
Hmm.
Everyone is getting used to understanding how to talk to their AI, and
Yeah,
I think it's going to have to be a new mindset
yeah,
shift again. How do I talk to my data? It's almost like I have this little mini personality that's sitting in the
yeah,
corner that I need to go and
yeah.
understand now. Okay, yeah, I like that. That can be the tagline. So, just in terms of the work that you're doing with Lookup AI,
Hmm.
in terms of your personal business and data philosophy, trying to get data to be a kind of a force multiplier for commercial success. You have a couple case studies that you have spoken to directly that are actually using data as a force multiplier. So, yeah, I'd love for the rest of our conversation to be kind of grounded in those case studies. So, yeah, if you can share one or two, just depending on how you feel in terms of the context.
Absolutely. In Lookup AI, we are currently working with a payment gateway in the Middle East. They're one of the largest payment gateway. And imagine when I say payment gateway, it's every transaction that you make through your card or your Apple Pay or your Google Pay or even an online transaction. All of those are captured daily per second basis. And if a payment gateway covering majority of the Middle Eastern market, imagine the volume of data. I'm just
Amazing.
contextualizing the volume of data.
Lots and lots.
Um, and that's the beauty of it. Now, how you can use that data to not just benefit you as a payment gateway, but how can you use it to create a value-added service for your partners in business? A payment gateway really is working with merchants or small businesses or enterprises to basically provide a payment service, right? It's executing the payment for you. But how can I strengthen that relationship? By offering you, because I have so much data, I can create a product that helps your business get further in terms of growth, in terms of sales, in terms of getting new customers, and so on and so forth. Now, when we are talking about this payment data, what we are really doing is instead of coming at data analytics from a sales commercial angle, we are coming at it from a payments angle. Payments are executed transactions, which means people have bought something. So you know who's your customer segment that you want to target because they've purchased something. So it's more targeted. It's more, you have insights like, oh, you know what? This particular business flourishes in this season. If it's football season, if it's rugby season, you have pubs and, in Ireland, you have pubs and places which have screenings for the game are going to be doing more business as compared to, say, a grocery store on that day, right? So it's contextualizing events outside of that payment data, merging it with the transactions, and then doing two things. One, for the payment gateway, strengthening the relationship with the merchant, giving them more as a value-added service, allowing them to have a greater lifetime value for that merchant. And for the merchant, to not wanting to spend time on building dashboards, building analytics, hiring analytics. You have this platform which sits with you, with your data, and also the market data to tell you what to do, who to target, when to target. It's answering those questions. And because now we are in the Gen AI space, you can also talk to your data. So everything is explainable. You don't have to. This is our tagline, by the way, Lee. We say we help you talk to your data because you don't need to be a data analyst. I am a data analyst. You don't need to be one. You need to do the business that you're in. So it's making that bridge between a data analyst and the business owner, but giving him everything and empowering him with everything that they need to do to execute their goals and achieve their targets.
So if we use your example there, right?
Mhm.
So that particular payment gateway,
Yeah.
one of the largest in the Middle East,
Yeah.
clearly loads of data, loads of transactions that are going
Yeah.
through it. It's now able to pull particular data insights from those transactions. I'm assuming they are productizing that capability and selling it as an upsell then to merchants.
Correct. It's a subscription-based model, which is why we talk about how you can strengthen that relationship. So because you have so many payment gateways in the market, and it's that 1% transaction fee that makes a whole lot of difference. But if you can make that 1% count by offering a value-added service, that's where you're building that relationship with the merchant and possibly acquiring new merchants as well.
Okay. Can you share what kind of insights the retailer could get from that as part of the subscription?
Absolutely. So we are talking about Middle Eastern market. So for example, it's very rich in terms of different geographies, right? So even down to my tourists love my product versus it's a local preferred product. And that they can distinguish that. And what we've added in the process is also forecasting for this season, for this holiday season, or for this festival season. Your forecast last year was this. Sorry, your actual sales was this, but your forecast is this because of X, Y, and Z numbers. Then they're also able to see, because we have payments data across Middle East, well, most of Middle East, you're also able to see actual transaction and the market share that you hold with the other players. So it's benchmarking. It's not it's not benchmarking for the entire market, but because this player is pretty dominant in the market, you can actually see where you stand with respect to other players in your industry. So those kind of insights are very difficult to build in-house. And imagine the amount of time and effort that goes into building it. Why would you spend that time when you can get those insights right away and you can action them rather than, spending that time in building it? It's something we used to say in my last organization. It's time to value. How much time are you spending to get the value out of what you're using?
Yeah, and as a small business, they typically, or as a smaller business, they wouldn't have the wider insights from a
Yes.
market perspective. Um, just kind of off the top thinking, being
Hmm.
in product design and product development, one of the biggest challenges is trying to position your product
Yeah.
from a pricing perspective when you've got multiple competitors. For the most part, it's apples to apples, but sometimes it's apple to oranges, and people are going, "Well, it's fruit."
Yeah.
And then trying to figure out the pricing points, getting that level of detailed analysis around potentially areas of improvement or making yourself more competitive. It's probably going into an area which is a little bit gray, but yeah, that insight is very, very powerful in the right hands.
100%. With payments data, the challenge that you may run into is because it's payments, you just know what was the transaction amount, not the product amount. So what the game changer here is when you supplement this with the merchant's own data, because they know what product was purchased. So when you join the two, that's when you can actually go down to inventory management. You can go down to pricing. You can also, something that we do as well is cross-sell and upsell of their products. So if someone's buying a particular article from my store, how can I cross-sell or upsell based on their profile? What are they more likely to buy?
Yeah, very interesting. I know you had a second case study that was in a different area. Do you want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that, in terms of just commercializing of the data story is we did, and you touched upon this pricing. I did this with one of the Fortune 500 pharmaceuticals back in the day, which was there's a new drug launch. They're all set, but they wanted to do the pricing had to be right. And I'm talking about a Fortune 500 pharmaceutical, so you can imagine the competition when there is a new drug launch. They've gotten the FDA approval, and we got the data, and I am not exaggerating. The data was really, really scattered. And when we went back to the business owners asking, okay, what does this data even mean? Like, what do these fields mean? We don't know. So it's the I always say this, that data is only, it can give you insights when it's governed and managed properly, when it's quality data. So in this particular case, we had multiple sessions with the business owners to kind of fill in the gaps that the data had. Also have the data management principles put into play, a framework put into play. And then the third, we set a governance model for them to maintain it going forward as well. Once we reached that stage, that's when we started to analyze the data. Because if you analyze sub-quality data, you're going to get sub-quality insight. It's that simple. It's directly proportional. So maintaining the quality, maintaining the governance, maintaining the data, then moving on to insights. The interesting part of that was the outcome that we found was their R&D costs weren't the pricing lever. It was the taxes. And you can't do anything about taxes, can you? So it was it was just an eye opener for them on what are the levers that we have to better manage the price for that particular product.
So one of the things that I wanted to maybe just chat on is just in terms of acquiring data. So if we're looking at the insights of the information from your first case study, where there's vast amount of data, but it's from an upstream provider and you do not have the context inside your organization. And the second one is where you've actually highlighted that in that instance, the actual data wasn't very good because it wasn't complete. It wasn't structured in a systematic way. So what is your perception on purchasing data in order to be able to actually create a competitive edge inside a business, right? So going to data brokers and actually acquiring that, there is a follow-up kind of question associated to that, which is the ethical consideration around that data, GDPR considerations around that data. So maybe, what are your thoughts around that, especially as a data analyst, when you're seeing these challenges? Those kinds of questions will always come up from industry going, can I just buy it?
Correct. So it's a very fair question. And honestly, as a data analyst, I would want as much data as I can get, right? Because that's what makes my insights richer. That's what is making my conclusions and pattern recognition richer. But there are considerations which fall in consulting, we say, as part of data strategy.
Yeah.
On what data sets are actually relevant to the use case we are trying to solve here. If we are going into purchasing data, what I've seen one time in one of my data strategy engagements back in the day was sales and marketing were both purchasing that data, same data set. They were paying twice within the same firm. So I think one of the things that we need to be mindful of is if we are buying data sets, there shouldn't be silos created because of that purchase. Or the teams should be talking to each other. If there's a possession of a data set, they need to be monitored and governed by a single body so as to sort of replicate into the organization. That's number one. Number two, in terms of the relevance, I think you touched upon it as well, Lee, in your follow-up question, which is the compliance piece. Most of the data, and imagine I've worked with life sciences and pharmaceuticals. See, we are talking patient data.
Yeah.
We are talking prescriptions. We are talking pharmacy data. All of these are really, really sensitive information. When we are purchasing that data, we need to understand the different levels of governance. Are we a controller? Are we a processor? Are we in possession of that data? So what are the guidelines we need to follow? So one is about the use case and the relevance of the data set. The second is once I do get that in-house, how am I supposed to manage it and be compliant with the different guidelines across the world? For example, sorry. For example, you have HIPAA guidelines in the US, you have GDPR here. It's just making sure that the data and its sanctity is protected and it's compliant with the regulations. So I'm not fully against buying data, but it has to be justified in terms of the use case that we are solving. It doesn't need to create silos. That's number one rule. And then the third would be that you know how to manage and store it in a way that it's compliant with the guidelines in the country you're in. So it's the three parts, and obviously having people wrapped around this setup, which is people need to be aware they are using sensitive information if they are, and act accordingly to that particular data set. From analytics point of view, I think it just makes like the insight richer. So I'm not, I wouldn't be against it.
So there's a little bit of an ethical kind of wash in it,
100%.
but from an analyst perspective, it's sort of like, yeah, no, dish it up. We can make it work. Don't worry, guys. So one of the things that I was thinking about it in terms of data is actually seeing data as an asset, right? But not as an asset in the way that you've been describing now in terms of creating insights and all the rest of it, but an asset as a resource asset to actually negotiate the value of a business. Because if they sit on top of vast amount of data, the underlying that asset is worth something, and we saw that from Musk buying Twitter as an example, where he suddenly has access to vast amount of online data within that environment, right? So, do you see that as being a lever or a requirement or an event for potential mergers and acquisitions of businesses to get access to that data, so they don't necessarily have to purchase it, but they're actually bringing it in-house so they can control the data, control the narrative, and almost control the distribution of information? Like, as an analyst, I know I'm stretching us a little bit, but yeah, I'd really love your thought process on that.
Oh, that's an interesting point of view, honestly, because I have seen and have had conversations with people, executives who are thinking from that lens. Lee, it's not something that's net new or not being discussed. Although I wouldn't say that that's the sole criteria or can be a sole criteria for a merger or an acquisition. That's just my personal point of view, because if if there is data and there is an intent to purchase that data, a merger alone wouldn't. I don't think a data set alone would justify the merger act or the acquisition act in my head, because there is then, once you acquire the data, there has to be a business plan against it, which justifies the cost of that merger or acquisition. So I'm just thinking that, yes, it's not something that that's net new and not thought before, but I wouldn't consider that as a sole lever for making that decision, if it was me.
Yeah, again, I haven't found any specific case studies like that. The closest one was that I mentioned was the purchase of Twitter, because of not because, but one of the underlying drivers, I believe, would have been around the data. But again, because we're talking all things data, you can't not talk about intellectual property without bringing up data and AI, right? So, I mean, right now, IP, intellectual property, in all forms, seems to be challenged within the context of AI, within the context of training data, basically the inputs from an AI perspective and then the outputs from an AI perspective. So, and if we just look at it from a patent perspective, the idea that it has to be born of the mind, it is an output from an AI system, is not directly born from the mind, and therefore wouldn't necessarily be eligible to go through a patent process. So, what's your view on intellectual property? What's your view on protecting individuals' rights, individuals being either a corporation or a person, in terms of their creative work? And then also just in terms of intellectual property as a whole, securing that going forward. As a data analyst, how would you feel businesses should be protecting their IP, both from an input perspective and from an output perspective going forward, as they create new intellectual property, and it could even be the secret source of a business?
It's exactly what Lookup has, actually. So I'm gonna talk it in terms of my own business here. But the secret sauce that we have is the model that we have that sits behind the platform that we're offering, right? And that's machine learning, that's advanced analytics, and LLM, large language model. And in terms of the IP itself, it's protected because of the way these are integrated together. And the output would be what we have in the platform, which allows or empowers a business user to not have a data analytics background, but yet be able to read, converse, and talk to their data to action, to get the next best action from that. And that's kind of where we are at. I wouldn't be, I don't want to go deeper into the IP section because that's not my expertise area, but that's really how we are looking at it, and any data analyst would. It's the set of models or the things that you build of the current ecosystem where you can draw a line of saying this is the secret sauce and then the output associated to it. I would wonder if you can sort of bifurcate the two into input only or output only. I would imagine it may be a mix of two because then you're creating that secret sauce, like you said. In a very naive way, I've answered that question, however much I could. Lee.
Not a problem. Not a problem. I can't believe it. 30 minutes has already managed to sneak past us. I actually had a few more questions, but we're going to just have to park that for a follow-up. So
Sure.
thank you, Shrey. Thank you. I appreciate your time. And to our audience, thank you very much for joining us today. If you found this conversation interesting, useful, insightful, please share it with your friends and colleagues. We would both appreciate it. And then reach out to me on my LinkedIn if you have any questions regarding AI governance, or the development of an AI policy or strategy. And if, of course, you want to be a guest on the LinkedIn Live podcast. So in closing, Shrey, how can the audience get in touch with you to expand on this topic should they want to have a chat with you directly?
Absolutely. I am very active on LinkedIn, folks. So thank you so much for joining. And I'm definitely reachable on LinkedIn. We have our website, lookup.ai, lookup with a Q. You can visit that. You can email us directly on the website as well. And again, thank you. Thank you so much for being so patient and listening to us for the past 30 minutes. Really appreciate it.
Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.